it be a new director of football or will it be a sporting director? I say it like that because Manchester City are, we understand, closing in on an agreement for Hugo Viana to come here to the City Football Academy and replace Jiki Begiristain. Hugo Viana is currently the director of football at Sporting in Lisbon. It's a role where he's enjoyed plenty of success over the last 6 years in tenure, 2 league titles in that 6 years, including last summer when they won the title for the first time in 3 seasons. And his role in helping them return to the top of Portuguese football has been credited. He's put them in a position where they're top of the Portuguese table once again, and fans in the Premier League might remember Hugo Viana as a young, potentially talented young player coming in from Portugal when he joined Newcastle in the early 2000s. Now, that was an underwhelming stint in English football, it has to be said. He didn't quite live up to the expectation, but since he's developed his career, went on to be a Portuguese international player, but certainly since he's retired is when he's had most impact. Remember, we brought you the news earlier this week that Jiki Begiristain was going to be stepping down, or expected certainly to step down this summer. At the age of 60, expected that this was the time where he'd already hung on, worked with Pep Guardiola and brought such a tremendous era of success here to Manchester City. Remember, he joined the club in 2012, so all of the trophies that line the walls of the honours boards here at the City Football Academy were under the stewardship of Jiki Begiristain. And in this room, Pep Guardiola has spoken at length about the impact and importance of his good friend Jiki. Remember, the pair of them were at Barcelona together, so they've had that ongoing working relationship, which is understood to be certainly coming to an end this summer. And the interesting thing about Hugo Viana and potentially this deal getting close now is that City want to have the new man, the replacement for Jiki Begiristain, to be here in post with maybe a 6-month handover so he can work alongside Begiristain in the final part of this season, understand what makes Manchester City tick, and perhaps even build that relationship with Pep Guardiola, whose own future remains uncertain. We've still had nothing concrete either way on whether he will choose to stay beyond the end of his contract, which expires in the summer. So certainly seems as though Manchester City have taken a big step forward in this potential appointment. Some reports suggesting Viana could even be in post by as early as next week. Hey!
Week 5 of the 2024 NFL season started Thursday night with the Atlanta Falcons escaping with an overtime win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The first of 3 straight weeks of London games got started Sunday morning with the Minnesota Vikings remaining undefeated as they knocked off Aaron Rodgers, who became the 9th QB to throw for 60,000 yards, and the New York Jets. Later, the Baltimore Ravens won an overtime thriller versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Jacksonville Jaguars earned their first victory of the season over the Indianapolis Colts, and the New York Giants beat the Seattle Seahawks on the road to move to 2-3. Sunday's action wrapped with the Dallas Cowboys beating the Pittsburgh Steelers in a low-scoring affair, following a lengthy weather delay. On Monday Night Football, the Kansas City Chiefs toppled the New Orleans Saints and are now 5-0. Our NFL Nation reporters reacted to all the action, answering lingering questions coming out of each game and detailing everything else you need to know for every team. Let's get to it. Will the Chiefs ever again win a game without having to sweat in the fourth quarter? The Chiefs finally won a game by more than one score. The team had previously tied an NFL record by winning the previous 7 games by 1 score, but their struggles in finishing drives made them sweat much deeper into their win over the Saints than they otherwise needed to. After a nice opening drive that finished with a touchdown, the Chiefs struggled in the red zone. The Chiefs had to resort to a trick play, with Travis Kelce taking the snap to break through with a short fourth-quarter TD. Describe the game in 2 words: seeing red. The Chiefs let the Saints hang around by scoring a touchdown on just 2 of 7 trips inside the New Orleans 20. On one trip, Juju Smith-Schuster deflected a pass at the goal line to a Saints defender for an interception. The Chiefs will continue to play close games until they learn to finish drives. Most surprising performance. Smith-Schuster had just 2 catches in the Chiefs' first 4 games, but he had 7 for 130 yards against the Saints. Smith-Schuster looked a lot like Rashee Rice in that he picked up many of his yards by running hard after the catch, 82 gacked. How will the Saints regroup after this loss? The Saints not only have an ugly list of injuries, including an oblique injury for staring quarterback Derek Carr, but they'll see what their team is truly made of in the next few weeks against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and former coach Sean Payton, now with the Denver Broncos. The Saints looked unstoppable just a few weeks ago, but teams have clearly figured out the key to beating them. They need to get healthy and find a way to climb back out of a hole to get to .500 again. Eye-popping stat. Saints DT Kalen Saunders had a one-handed pick of former teammate Patrick Mahomes in the end zone. According to Next Gen Stats, the 324-pound Saunders reached a top speed of 15.79 miles per hour on his 36-yard interception, the third fastest speed by a ball carrier who weighs over 320 pounds since 2016. Describe the game in 2 words. Explosive plays. New Orleans gave up huge gains from Mahomes to wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, giving up a 31-yard gain in the second quarter, a 46-yard defensive pass interference penalty in the third quarter, and a 50-yard gain in the fourth quarter. Even though the Saints held the Chiefs to multiple field goals, the explosive plays ultimately doomed them. Is this the kind of win that can jumpstart a season? Without Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Brandon Cooks at the start of the game, then losing their top rookie draft picks, Marshawn Kneeland and Tyler Guyton, in the first half, the Cowboys showed some guts after 2 red zone turnovers and a blocked field goal. Their next 6 opponents are a combined 18-10, so winning this contest was a must to keep pace with the 4-1 Washington Commanders in the NFC East. At 3-2, the Cowboys avoided their worst 5-game start since coach Mike McCarthy's first season, 2020, when they finished 6-10. Most surprising performance. Rico Dowdle had a 12-yard carry in the first half. It was the first rush by a Cowboys light running back to go for more than 10 yards this season. The last time a Dallas running back had a carry of more than 10 yards was the 2023 finale, when Dowdle had a 20-yard carry against Washington. Dallas didn't have to wait long for its next one, however, as Dowdle registered a 13-yard run in the third quarter and another 13-yard carry in the fourth. Biggest hole in the game plan. It wasn't so much the plan as it was the execution, as the Cowboys failed to score a touchdown on their first 3 red zone trips, until it mattered most. Dak Prescott fumbled and was intercepted on 2 first-half tries inside the 20-yard line, and a third ended with a blocked field goal attempt. Playing at less than full strength, the Cowboys' margin for error was small, so missing out on points in a tight game was costly. But their last red zone trip was the decider. On 4th and goal from the 4-yard line, Prescott hit wide receiver Jalen Tolbert with 20 seconds left. How much longer will the Steelers stick with QB Justin Fields? He had an inconsistent outing, completing 14 of 25 attempts for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. Though coach Mike Tomlin has been adamant that the starting quarterback question won't be answered until Russell Wilson is back from a calf injury, whatever advantage Fields might have gained from his early starts could be evaporating, as the offense turned 3 big stops, a fumble recovery, interception, and blocked field goal into 3 punts on Sunday. Most surprising performance. George Pickens. Despite wearing eye black that asserted he was always effing open, the wide receiver had just 2 catches for 29 yards on 6 targets. Offensive coordinator Arthur Smith had previously made it a priority to get Pickens involved, but he was noticeably absent until a 22-yard gain late in the fourth quarter. Not only did Pickens pick up a first down, but he drew a late hit penalty on the Cowboys to set up the Steelers for their second touchdown. Biggest hole in the game plan, 3rd down defense. Though the unit brought the splash back with 3 forced turnovers, the 3rd down defense went from bad to worse. The Steelers allowed Dallas to convert a season-worst 60% of its third down attempts, up from allowing the Colts to convert 53% a week ago. The D looked like it found redemption with a goal line stand in the waning seconds of the game, until Prescott hit Tolbert for the winning score. Have the Giants finally turned the corner? This young team is playing better each week. They not only won on the road in a difficult environment in Seattle, but they did it without star wide receiver Malik Neighbors, concussion, and starting running back Devin Singletary, groin. Quarterback Daniel Jones continues to play well. The offensive line has improved, the defensive line is feasting, 5 sacks, and the young secondary played its best game of the season. There is finally reason to be optimistic about the Giants. Eye-popping stat. Jones had 2 passing touchdowns against the blitz for just the second time in his career. Jones was not thrown by Seattle's pressure, finishing 9 of 11 against an extra rusher. He was 7 of 7 for 88 yards and 2 TDs at one point midway through the third quarter. Most surprising performance, Deonte Banks versus DK Metcalf. Banks was called out by his position coach for his effort, or lack thereof, after CeeDee Lamb's touchdown on him last week. He bounced back in a big way Sunday. Banks forced a fumble tackling Metcalf and held him to 2 catches on 5 targets for 24 yards throughout the first 3 quarters. Are the Seahawks any good? The validity of the Seahawks' 3-0 start was in question, given they beat 3 below-average quarterbacks. There was no shame in getting beaten by the Lions in Week 4, with half their defense missing against a championship-caliber team. But there's no excuse for Sunday's performance. Not even the short week and the latest injuries to Rick Woolen and Uchenna Nwosu. They were playing at home with a somewhat healthier defense against a 1-3 Giants team that was without 2 of their best offensive targets. The Seahawks' schedule is only going to get tougher, starting Thursday night against the 49ers. Biggest hole in the game plan, not getting running back Kenneth Walker III more involved. 15 of the Seahawks' 17 offensive plays in the first half were Geno Smith dropbacks. Walker, who scored 3 touchdowns last week in his return from an oblique injury, finished with only 5 carries for 19 yards, plus 57 yards on 7 catches. The pass-heavy attack made sense against Detroit, but that wasn't the case Sunday. Most surprising performance. The Seahawks allowed 175 rushing yards to a Giants team that entered Sunday averaging just over 85 per game, 30th in the NFL. What's more, New York was without Devin Singletary. Backup Tyrone Tracy had 129 yards on only 18 carries. Seattle's run defense continues to be suspect. How many interceptions will Xavier McKinney end up with? The answer can't be 17, can it? If so, he would break the NFL single-season record of 14. McKinney has a pick in each one of his 5 games with the Packers. His latest came Sunday to make him just the 3rd NFL player since 1940 to record an interception in each of his first 5 games with a team, according to ESPN research. One series before the pick, McKinney recovered a fumble. The Packers have 14 takeaways, the most by any team through 5 games since the 2021 Bills, 15, per ESPN research. Describe the game in 2 words. Romeo who? A day after Romeo Doubs was suspended for conduct detrimental to the team, Jayden Reed continued his strong start to the season. With 4 catches for 78 yards, plus 2 runs for 19 yards, Reed became just the 6th player in NFL history to put up 400 receiving yards and 100 rushing yards in the first 5 games of a season, according to ESPN research. Eye-popping stat. Tucker Kraft's 66-yard catch-and-run touchdown was the longest by any NFL tight end this season, and the longest score by a Packers tight end since Tom Crabtree's 72-yarder in 2012, per ESPN research. Kraft reached a top speed of 19.7 miles per hour, the highest top speed for a tight end on a scoring play this season, according to NFL Next Gen stats. Where do the Rams go from here? The Rams enter their bye at 1-4 after losing to the Packers. They're in a similar hole to a year ago, at 3-6 at their bye week. Last season, they won 7 of their final 8 games to reach the playoffs, but a similar run would be a tall task for this team. The Rams' offense, which entered the game ranked 17th in DVOA, has struggled without wide receivers Cooper Kupp, ankle, and Puka Nacua knee. The Rams are targeting a Week 7 return for K.L.P, but it might be too late for Los Angeles playoffs hopes, which were at 14.8% entering the game, according to ESPN's FPI projections. Biggest hole in the game plan, limiting explosive plays. Defensive coordinator Chris Shula noted that the Packers can establish the run but can also pick their spots when they want to go for explosiveness. That was the case on 2 of Green Bay's scoring drives, a 53-yard catch for Jaden Reed to set up a touchdown and a 66-yard touchdown catch for Tucker Kraft. Most surprising performance, running back Blake Corum. After coach Sean McVay repeatedly said during training camp that the Rams wanted to spell Kyren Williams with third-round pick Corum, the rookie played only 8 offensive snaps through the first 4 games. Against the Packers, he played 11 snaps, recording 5 carries for 25 yards and 1 catch for 8 yards. What impact will the Broncos' battered offensive line have on keeping this win streak going? The Broncos beat the Raiders for the first time since 2019 and had their highest scoring output in a game since 2021, so Sunday was a confetti cannon day. But it may now take some creativity and heavy lifting to get their offensive line settled. Right tackle Mike McGlinchey is on injured reserve, and his replacement, Alex Palczewski, left Sunday's game with an ankle injury. Center Luke Wattenberg also left with an ankle injury. For 1 snap in the third quarter, left tackle Garrett Bowlers limped off the field, and the Broncos had a brief glimpse at the most difficult of scenarios. They rediscovered Javonte Williams in the run game, and a franchise record 11 players caught a pass in the win. But they've been one of the league's worst passing offenses when they've struggled to control the line of scrimmage. Most surprising performance. Williams. He didn't seem like his former self for most of 2023 after his return from a horrific knee injury in 2022. He seemed to still be finding his way with 2.2 yards per carry in the first 3 games. However, in Denver's Week 4 win over the Jets, he had 77 yards on 16 carries. Sunday, Williams had 40 yards on his first 7 carries after halftime. Early prediction for next week. The Chargers will take aim at inside linebackers Cody Barton and Justin Strenad. Barton has been a quality addition, and Strenad has done well, but the Raiders found success between the guards with 110 yards rushing by halftime. The Broncos slammed the door in the second half, 5 rushing yards allowed, but Chargers coach Jim Harbaugh will almost certainly decide to swing the hammer a bit too, with the number 11 rushing offense entering Week 4. Is the Gardner Minshew residency going dark in Las Vegas? Getting benched in favor of quarterback Aidan O'Connell late in the third quarter after 2 interceptions, including a 100-yard pick-six to Patrick Surtain II that tied the score at 10-10 when the Raiders were threatening to go up 17-3, would suggest so. Minshew, who completed his first 9 passes, simply melted down after the pick. Minshew finished 12 of 17 for 137 yards, while a clearly rusty O'Connell was 10 of 20 for 94 yards, with an interception, as the Raiders' 8-game winning streak in the series ended. Describe the game in 2 words: meltdown high. The Raiders give off tenuous House of Cards vibes, and after the Minshew pick-six, they collapsed, in breathtaking fashion. Since Antonio Pierce took over as interim coach on November 1, 2023, the Raiders were a model of disciplined play, in terms of fewest flags thrown on them. Sunday, they became an undisciplined mess, with 11 penalties accepted. Their most since having 13 total penalties against the Patriots in Week 15 of the 2022 season. Eye-popping stat: rookie Brock Bowers gained 31 yards after the catch over expected on his 57-yard touchdown, which was the most by a tight end this season. It was the longest receiving TD by a Raiders TE since 2009, and the longest by a rookie since 2019, according to ESPN research. How can the Cardinals build on Sunday's win? It might just be the first weekend of October, but Sunday's win over the 49ers was as important of a win as the Cardinals may get all season. It showed the Cardinals they can win a game in which they bend but don't break. Arizona's defense held deep in the red zone 4 times, and the offense finally found its footing in the fourth quarter when QB Kyler Murray led the Cardinals on a game-winning drive. Their 2-3 record is significantly different than last year's 1-4 start. Most surprising performance, Marvin Harrison Jr. He had 2 catches, which came in the first quarter for 36 yards, but was targeted 5 other times. A series of miscommunications contributed to Harrison's tough day. His ineffectiveness resulted in just 2 targets in the second half, the first within the opening minute of the third quarter. He didn't get thrown to again until there was 2:49 left in the game on an important fourth down conversion. Describe the game in 2 words: defensive holds. The Cardinals' defense certainly had its share of lapses and gave up its share of big plays, but the unit came up big when needed. Arizona stopped the 49ers 4 times at or inside the 10-yard line, forcing 3 field goals and a fumble on those drives. After another division loss, where is this season headed for the 49ers? It's too early to rule out the Niners from making a playoff run, given their history of playing better in November and December under coach Kyle Shanahan. But if they're going to get there this year, it's going to be a slog. This team doesn't look anything like the juggernaut of 2023. They're already 0-2 in the NFC West and 0-3 in the NFC. All of that factors into potential tiebreakers at the end of the season, and with a short week trip to Seattle coming up, the Niners already have their backs against the wall if they're hoping to win their 3rd consecutive NFC West crown. Biggest hole in the game plan. Without RB Christian McCaffrey, Achilles tendonitis, it was reasonable to expect that the 49ers offense would take a step back on finishing drives with touchdowns. But it's a problem that the team still hasn't found a consistent solution for. The 49ers made 6 red zone trips, yet they only managed 1 touchdown. For a team that led the NFL in red zone efficiency in 2023, answers need to be found quickly. Most surprising performance. Special teams has been a consistent problem, but that unit delivered for the Niners on Sunday. In the second quarter, Diomador Lenoir scooped up a field goal, blocked by defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, and raced 61 yards for a touchdown. The first blocked field goal attempt returned for a touchdown by San Francisco since 2009. The injury to kicker Jake Moody on the ensuing kickoff was a quick reality check, but getting special teams production was a needed bonus. How huge was that comeback win for the Ravens? Quarterback Lamar Jackson and the Ravens came back from 10 points down in the fourth quarter to deliver an unbelievable overtime victory. In winning its 3rd straight game, Baltimore might have ended the season of the rival Bengals, who fell to 1-4. This looked like the old Ravens, from Jackson making MVP plays on the run to kicker Justin Tucker hitting long-range field goals in the clutch. It wasn't always pretty. Jackson fumbled a snap in overtime, but the Ravens looked like one of the teams to beat in the AFC. Describe the game in 2 words: didn't flinch. The Ravens came up with a huge turnover after allowing 5 touchdown passes. Cornerback Marlon Humphrey's interception at the Ravens' 28-yard line put Baltimore in position to tie the score with 3:01 remaining in regulation. Tucker, who had been 1 of 7 since the start of 2023 on attempts of 50 yards or longer, hit a 56-yarder with 1:35 remaining in the fourth quarter. Tucker then hit the winning 24-yard field goal in overtime. Eye-popping stat. After rushing for 175 yards against the Bengals, the Ravens have outrushed their opponents by at least 100 yards in all 5 games, per Elias. That's the longest such streak by any team to start a season since 1933, when yardages were fully tracked. They have now outrushed opponents by 754 yards this season. Is there a short-term fix for the Bengals' defense? At this point, the defense is what it is. Cincinnati made some changes in the secondary in order to improve the pass defense, and that hasn't made a big impact. Lamar Jackson threw for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns in Baltimore's win. Even though the Bengals didn't have starting slot cornerback Mike Hilton, the unit was good enough to produce a better performance. It'll be up to defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo to find fixes to try to salvage Cincinnati's season. Describe the game in 2 words: deflating loss. The Bengals knew how important it was to not only win their first AFC North game of the year, but also pick up their first home win. Cincinnati was in control for the majority of the game, but let a 10-point lead slip away and dropped to 0-3 at home. Biggest hole in the game plan. Jackson had little problem finding his tight ends. Charlie Kolar and Mark Andrews each had big receptions in the middle of the defense, combining for 119 receiving yards and a touchdown. Each of them had at least one catch of over 25 yards. How will the Texans' offense survive without wide receiver Nico Collins? The Texans' offense appeared to be en route to a dominant day fueled by Collins, who scored a 67-yard touchdown in the first quarter to put the Texans up 14-3. But on that play, Collins injured his hamstring and missed the rest of the game. The offense scored just 9 points the rest of the way. The lack of scoring allowed the Bills to come back from a 23 hole and knot things up at 20-20. Eye-popping stat. When the Texans pressured Bills quarterback Josh Allen, he went 1 for 14. Allen ended the game with the lowest completion percentage, 30%, in a game with at least 30 pass attempts in the last 30 seasons. He was 0 for 6 under duress in the first half. Describe the game in 2 words: late struggles. Outside of the first game against the Colts, when they scored 17 points in the second half, the offense has totaled 23 points in the final 2 quarters of the other 4 games. That's why the Texans struggle to put games away comfortably. What can the offense do to start games stronger? The Bills' offense was just not clicking in the first half, outside of some runs by James Cook, scoring just 3 points. QB Josh Allen completed 33.3% of his throws through the opening 2 quarters, which was his worst completion percentage in a half since 2019. Receivers weren't finding ways to get open and not appearing on the same page. Even without Khalil Shakir, ankle, Allen's top target, the Bills have to find better ways to script early drives and get more receivers open downfield. Digging themselves into deep holes in the past 2 games has been costly. Biggest hole in the game plan: third down defense. The Bills allowed the Texans to extend drives, with Houston going 8 of 16 on third down and 5 of 9 on third and long. Buffalo's defense kept the team in the game with 2 big turnovers in the fourth quarter, but allowed Houston to take time off the clock too often. Describe the game in 2 words: offensive miscues. Allen finished the game 9 of 30 for 131 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 sack. There were miscommunications with receivers and drops on almost every drive throughout the game, including the final drive where they failed to advance the ball or burn clock. Will the Dolphins stick with quarterback Tyler Huntley? Huntley's passing numbers have not been good over the past 2 weeks, and he still doesn't look fully comfortable within the Dolphins' offense. He was more willing to push the ball downfield in Week 5, however, which feels like a small sign of life for this offense. The Week 6 bye comes at a critical time as Miami needs to spend it getting Huntley acclimated. Most surprising performance. After running back Devon Achane was ruled out in the first half with a concussion, Jalen Wright led the Dolphins with 86 rushing yards on 13 carries. The rookie had a strong training camp and preseason, so his performance isn't coming out of nowhere, but this was clearly his breakout game. Miami finished with a season-high 193 rushing yards in a surprising show of physicality for the NFL's 24th-ranked rushing offense entering Week 5. Biggest hole in the game plan. The Dolphins have a league-leading 11 special teams penalties this season, adding another Sunday in addition to a field goal blunder in the first half. Special teams is a key area Miami has struggled with this season and has exacerbated its rough start. How much closer are the Patriots to starting rookie QB Drake May? The Patriots' passing game was mostly stuck in neutral until showing life on their final drive. Coach Gerard Mayo had noted last week that it was unsustainable to keep playing offense the way they have and expect to win. After reviewing the film, he'll have to decide if May would make a significant difference. Up to this point, the Patriots' lack of consistent pass protection had been the primary reason for offensive struggles. That seemed to improve against the Dolphins, putting more of the spotlight on some of Jacoby Brissett's struggles. Describe the game in 2 words: rock bottom. The defense hung in the game until being worn down late, but New England displayed a mostly punchless offense and was penalized 12 times for 104 yards. This feels like a Patriots team from the early 1990s, when they played uninspiring offensive football and were annual favorites for the first overall pick. Biggest hole in the game plan: clock management. Offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt and Brissett were shaky once again at the end of the second quarter, similar to a Week 2 loss to the Seahawks. The Patriots had the ball at their own 5-yard line with 1:43 remaining, and Ramondre Stevenson had run 8 yards on first down. But instead of working down the clock or forcing the Dolphins to use their timeouts, the Patriots then threw 2 straight incompletions. It might have led to a Dolphins field goal before halftime, if not for a poor snap. Does Washington have the NFL's best offense? No team has been as high-powered as the Commanders over the past 4 games. During that stretch, Washington has averaged an NFL-best 33.8 points and 409 yards. New Orleans was the top-ranked scoring offense, 31.8 points, entering Sunday, which was built on a combined 91 points in the first 2 games. Washington is now averaging 31.0 points for the season. With rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, the Commanders can hurt teams even when struggling. He did not have his best start, but finished with 238 yards and ran for 82 more yards. Eye-popping stat: Washington amassed 298 of its 434 total yards on just 8 plays. The offense hurt Cleveland all game with explosive plays. The Commanders had 7 plays that gained 28 yards or more. Daniels had passes of 66 and 41 yards, the latter ending in a touchdown. There was also a 50-yard run by Austin Eckler, who missed last week's contest with a concussion. Most surprising performance: linebacker Frankie Louvu. Louvu has been active all season, but dominated Sunday with 2.5 sacks and a fumble recovery. He also set up another sack by knocking Cleveland's running back several yards back, opening a lane for Bobby Wagner to finish the play. Have the 1-4 Browns dug themselves into an insurmountable hole? Cleveland entered the season with hopes of a deep playoff run, but is closer to a top 5 pick at this point. The Browns' revamped offense has flopped, with no signs of an identity or cohesiveness. Cleveland hasn't topped more than 18 points in a game, and its defense resembles nothing like the unit that dominated opponents in 2023. Through 5 games, there are few redeemable qualities that inspire confidence in this Browns team. Eye-popping stat: the Browns, who entered Week 5 with the worst third-down offense in the NFL, failed to convert all 12 of their third-down attempts with QB Deshaun Watson in. This was against a Commanders defense that entered the game with the 3rd worst EPA in the league. Early prediction for next week: the Browns will give up at least 175 rushing yards to the Eagles in Week 6. Cleveland's defense has now allowed over 150 rushing yards in consecutive games, and the Eagles rank 4th in rushing yards per game, 153.8. What has been the most impressive part of Caleb Williams' development? The rookie quarterback showed great improvement with his deep ball accuracy. In weeks 1 to 4, Williams was 5 of 29, 17%, with 3 interceptions on passes of at least 15 air yards, both marks which ranked at the bottom of the NFL among qualified QBs. Against the Panthers, Williams was 4 of 4 for 108 yards and 2 TDs on deep passes. The explosive plays showed up on big connections to Cole Kmet, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, and DJ Moore. Describe the game in 2 words: more dominance. Williams' connection with his number. One receiver finally came to fruition against Moore's former team. Williams and Moore discussed their frustrations over missed opportunities against the Rams in Week 4. And on Sunday, Moore hauled in 5 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. Eye-popping stat: the Bears' defense pressured QB Andy Dalton on 20 of his 41 dropbacks, 48.8%, for their highest pressure rate in a game since ESPN began tracking the metric in 2009. Dalton completed 8 of 12 passes for 73 yards, with 3 sacks and an interception when pressured. What will it take for QB Bryce Young to get another start? We may have found out. Young hadn't played since being benched at 0-2 until 4:15 remained Sunday, and the Panthers trailed 36-10. he was 4 of 7 for 58 yards. Andy Dalton, as well as he played in his first start, has been a part of consecutive losses. Dalton was ineffective against the Bears, and the deep balls that had separated him most from Young were non-existent. The Panthers insist Young can still be the future. Describe the game in 2 words: injury toll. Carolina was down 4 defensive starters heading into Sunday and lost outside linebacker Jadeveon Clowney in the first half. It doesn't have the personnel to stop anybody, even rookie Caleb Williams, who had ranked 29th in QBR, 29.9, but looked like an all-pro on Sunday. Eye-popping stat: the Panthers don't blitz a lot, 25%, and Sunday amplified why. They're not very good at it. The Panthers blitzed Williams on 31% of his dropbacks. Williams was 8 of 10 for 128 yards and a touchdown against the blitz. Did QB Trevor Lawrence's slump end? Lawrence, 371 yards, 2 TDs, hadn't won a start since November 26, 2023, losing 9 consecutive contests. That also happened to be the last time Lawrence threw for 300 yards. This was by far his, and the offense's, best performance since then. Was it perfect? No, since he did throw an easy interception, but Lawrence hit 2 deep shots to Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk after missing 3 potential long touchdowns last week. It was the kind of confidence-building performance he needed as the Jaguars head to London for back-to-back games. Most surprising performance: running back Tank Bigsby. He has been a solid complement to Travis Etienne Jr. for the first 4 weeks, but he took the lead role Sunday. He ran for 101 yards on 13 carries, both career highs, against the Colts, which included a 65-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. Etienne, 6 carries for 17 yards and 6 catches for 43 yards, spent much of the fourth quarter on the sideline. Eye-popping stat: rookie receiver Brian Thomas Jr. ran the 40-yard dash in 4.33 seconds at the Combine in February, so it wasn't surprising that he sped past the Colts' defensive backs on his 85-yard touchdown catch. But what is more impressive is that he reached a top speed of 22.15 miles per hour on the play, per NFL Next Gen stats. That's the fastest speed of any ball carrier this season, and the second fastest in the past 4 years. Where did the Colts' offensive explosion go? The Colts' offense ended the day with a bang, but it was anemic with Joe Flacco under center. While he was mostly accurate and in sync while replacing injured Anthony Richardson, Flacco failed to produce the chunk plays Richardson is known for. Flacco was averaging 5.6 yards per attempt until the first of the Colts' 2 late touchdown drives, forcing them to make long, time-consuming scoring drives. It wasn't until late in the fourth quarter that Flacco showed some aggressiveness, hitting wide receiver Alec Pierce on deep shots of 24 and 46 yards on consecutive plays. By then, the Colts were trailing by 14. Richardson, who missed the game with an oblique injury, entered the weekend leading the NFL in air yards per attempt, 12.6. Biggest hole in the game plan: the Colts relied on their typical 4-man rush. The problem is, the Colts are missing 3 of their top pass rushers, DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, and Tyquan Lewis, and the remaining personnel struggled to create pressure. As a result, Indy did not produce a sack, which allowed Trevor Lawrence to torch the Colts' secondary. He faced a 2.9% pressure rate, the lowest of his career, according to ESPN research. Describe the game in 2 words: the usual. The Colts lost their 10th consecutive road game against Jacksonville, and the games have included just about everything. In 2015, a 51-16 Colts loss, Indianapolis was outscored 42-3 in the second half. In 2021, the Colts needed to beat the 1-win Jaguars in the final week of the season to clinch a playoff spot, and lost. There's never a dull moment in Duval for the Colts. Is this a perfect start for the Vikings? Absolutely, despite the dramatic nature of the second half. The Vikings will enter their Week 6 bye undefeated, just 2 short of their projected win total, 6.8, per ESPN's Football Power Index. In London, they proved they have plenty of ways to push a game over the finish line, a key attribute for any team hoping to make a deep playoff run. In the worst game of quarterback Sam Darnold's short tenure with Minnesota, and after losing running back Aaron Jones' hip, in the first half, the Vikings got a defensive touchdown and picked off Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers 3 times, tying his single-game career high. Describe the game in 2 words: wild day. Rookie place kicker Will Reichard had a perfect day in a wild one for the special teams units. The Vikings might not have won without Reichard converting from 54, 53, and 41 yards. He is 9 for 9 on field goals and 16 for 16 on extra points this season. Most surprising performance: Darnold. He turned in by far his worst performance since signing with the Vikings this offseason, missing a series of open receivers and throwing more incompletions, 17, than completions, 14, for the first time in 2024. But as he has done throughout the season, he made some crucial fourth-quarter throws, hitting receiver Justin Jefferson for 25 yards and tight end Johnny Munt for 20 to set up the Vikings' final field goal. Can the Jets save their season by trading for WR Devontae Adams? It would make Aaron Rodgers happy, and they could use a partner for Garrett Wilson on the perimeter. Wilson, 13 catches for 101 yards, emerged from his slow start, but Rodgers didn't get much help from Allen Lazard, 3 drops. Or Mike Williams, 2 catches for 25 yards, who was invisible. Adams would help that, but Rodgers needs to play better too. He threw 3 interceptions, including 2 in the first quarter, a career first. That included a pick 6, putting the Jets in a 17-0 hole. The pass protection was shaky as Rodgers, 29 of 54 for 244 yards, took a pounding. He showed his toughness, but the Jets need more than that to turn around their season. Biggest hole in the game plan: 0 rushing attack. Again, Breece Hall, in a serious slump, was held to 23 yards on 9 carries. That makes 27 yards on 19 carries over the past 2 games. Offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett gave up on the running game when it would have made sense to give more opportunities to rookie Braylon Allen. The plan going into the season was to run the offense through Hall, but there's nothing there, putting a strain on Rodgers and the passing attack. Hackett's rushing scheme lacks creativity. It's so predictable. Most surprising performance: the Jets' defense. They looked awful in the first quarter. It looked like one of those days. But they flipped the script, playing without nickelback Michael Carter, who sustained a hamstring injury before the game, and without cornerback Sauce Gardner for a quarter. The Jets held the Vikings to 2 field goals in the second half. Good defense, inconsistent offense. Sound familiar? Is Atlanta's offensive performance sustainable? Probably not to the level of success it had against Tampa Bay, but it could be close. The Bucs were without All-Pro safety Antoine Winfield Jr., and when you're making some deep plays in the passing game, missing the best player in the back end will make a difference. Quarterback Kirk Cousins looks healthy and said he felt more anticipatory on his throws, meaning he's starting to find a rhythm with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and co. The more that happens, the more fluid the offense should be, leading to more nights like Thursday, but not likely to result in 550 offensive yards. Describe the game in 2 words: momentum changing. Had the Falcons lost, and with 22 seconds left, Tampa Bay had a 93% chance of winning, they would be 2-3 and potentially 2 games behind Tampa because of tiebreakers. Now, the Falcons are atop the division because of the tiebreaker and have a belief in what the offense can do after a 550-yard day. Biggest hole in the game plan: Atlanta still can't get to quarterbacks. The Falcons had 1 sack, and it was their only quarterback hit of the game. Atlanta's 5 sacks for the season are tied for last in the NFL. According to Pro Football Reference, its 14.4 pressure percentage entering Sunday was second worst, ahead of only Carolina, and its hurry percentage, 3.4, was only better than that of Arizona and Cincinnati. How is the Bucs' growing injury situation looking? They had 14 players on the injury report last week. Antoine Winfield Jr. foot returned to practice Friday but was limited. He'd allow the Bucs to use more dime packages and have more speed. It's unclear when right tackle Luke Goedeke, concussion, and defensive tackle Khalija Kancey, calf, will return. Goedeke was a full participant 2 weeks ago but has been limited ever since, and Kancey has yet to practice. Coach Todd Bowles said, "It's unclear the extent of safety Jordan Whitehead's groin injury. He's one of their best communicators." Describe the game in 2 words: missed opportunities. With Tampa leading 30-27, the Bucks' Tavier Thomas blocked a field goal attempt with 6:37 left in the fourth quarter, but Bucky Irving fumbled on the ensuing possession. With 1:52 left, Tampa's Levante David intercepted a pass, putting the Bucks on the Falcons' 28. But Tampa couldn't get a first down on the drive that followed, actually losing 14 yards, and were forced to punt. Eye-popping stat. The Bucks surrendered 121 yards after first contact, which is one of the strongest indicators of missed tackles. It was their fifth most yards after first contact allowed in a game since 2020. It should be noted that they surrendered 122 against the Broncos in Week 3.
Hey!
Well, again, Mr. Weir, we're going to take a deeper look, aren't we, into England's defeat, surprise, shock, whatever you want to call it, against Greece at Wembley. Speaking to ITV at full-time, Lee Carsley revealed that they'd only spent 20 minutes in training on the plan last night. I mean, is that a concern? Is he being too honest? What's the reaction? People just come off the end of the cricket, so we're going from the sublime to the ridiculous. Yes, as you said, 20 minutes spent on this, and people there'd been clamour for this. Let's get all the best players, all the best attacking talent on the pitch at one time. How do you get Bellingham, Foden, Palmer, Saka all in the same team? And there was the same criticism that Gareth Southgate had all summer as well. How you get them all on the same side? And Gareth Southgate said that you can't, and you have to sort of make compromises and have a balanced side. And you got pelters for that. Well, I wonder whether he's thinking this morning, that's exactly why I didn't do it. Because the fact that all these players were on the same pitch at the same time meant that these were the average field positions, Will. So you had Anthony Gordon hugging the left touchline, great. Bukayo Saka holding his width on the right, which is fantastic as well. Because you have the two false nines in Foden and Bellingham, they were kind of occupying the same space. And this is at average position, so they may have well been sort of interchanging, but neither of them are providing a focal point further up the pitch. And I remember watching, in the first half in particular, the amount of times that Bellingham was dropping back and picking the ball up here, which is his natural instinct to do, because it's not his natural instinct to play that sort of false nine role. The other thing this graphic shows as well is that Cole Palmer, who was kind of shoehorned into the team, playing out of position, not the position that he's been playing so successfully for Chelsea for a season and a half now, because he was sort of shoehorned in to sort of play between the 4-4 and in front of Declan Rice. He was drifting out to the right, but occupying a very similar position to Trent Alexander-Arnold. So you've arguably got England's two most creative players there, kind of stepping on each other's toes, both trying to do the same job. And that's why it didn't work. They looked so toothless going forward, but they left themselves so exposed at the back as well. I think we can also look at the amount of touches in the opposition box, and that kind of tells its own story as well, because Anthony Gordon had the most touches, only 5 for the hour that he was on the field. Bellingham, who was sort of in theory playing that false nine role, just the 4 touches, and he played all 90 minutes. And you can see down here, Ollie Watkins, he only came on for half an hour. That's the thing, Jimmy. They did have Watkins and they did have Solanke. Exactly. And when you bring an actual recognised centre forward on, they're obviously going to get more touches in the opposition box. So I think the fact that he sort of reverted to plan B and brought Watkins on and then eventually Solanke on as well, ended up playing a 4-4-2 towards the end, kind of shows that this experiment didn't really work. It's a tricky one for Carty, isn't it now? Because Finland on Sunday, also in the Nations League, and England played them a few weeks ago, didn't they? He's saying he's not going to go with the same approach. No. So does he just have to forget what happens against Greece if he's going to have any chance of getting the job, if he still has a chance now? Yeah.
And go back to what was plan A against the Republic of Ireland. I think he definitely still has a chance of getting the job. And as we were saying earlier, I think the FA, in an ideal world, would like to promote from within. He's done a great job with the under-21s. They're not going to just completely throw the baby out with the bathwater just because it wasn't a great performance last night. Roy Keane, after the game, was saying, you have to do the basics. You have to have urgency. The basics are so poor. Have some pride. It wasn't there. And I think that was the problem, that this experiment just didn't work. He knows that now. You can question why he was even going for the experiment in the first place, because Harry Kane hopefully will be fit for that game against Finland. And when you got Harry Kane in the field, obviously one of Foden or Bellingham or Palmer needs to make way. But if we look at the average of the 2 games that England have already played against Finland and the Republic of Ireland, this is the average of those 2 games. And their stats compared to that game against Greece last night. So 19 shots they averaged in those games as opposed to 12 last night.
8.5 shots on target, just the 2 shots on target last night. One came in the 3rd minute, one was Bellingham's winner, equaliser in the 87th minute. Final third passes, way down from 277 to 195. Passing actually, it isn't too dissimilar, but the shots faced, they've only faced 4 shots. On average against Finland and Republic of Ireland, i.e. 8 in total across the 2 games. They faced 12 shots against Greece last night. So it shows that having all that attacking talent on the field, well, it didn't really work going forward because they didn't look any more dangerous going forward, but also they left themselves so open at the back, and that is probably the big concern. It's a night to just write off for any, let's forget about it.